Tonight, Senate lawmakers set their sights on defense spending. After a military blockade over abortion and an amendment restricting service members traveling for abortions. Plus, follow the money. GOP candidates fundraising hauls ahead of the 2024 race for the White House. And out of tragedy, hope.
My faith was being challenged, and it was really hard.
Turning to God for answers in the wake of the Christian school shooting in Nashville that left 6 dead. All this and more tonight on Faith Nation. Abortion becomes a lightning rod in the fight for America's national security. Good evening in Washington, I'm Jenna Browder. A win for House Speaker Kevin McCarthy after Republicans united to pass a nearly $900 billion defense bill. McCarthy's victory could be short-lived, though, with the bill considered dead on arrival in the Democrat-controlled Senate. And for its part, the Senate is also drafting its own bill. National security correspondent Caitlin Burke has tonight's top story. Caitlin, we know abortion is a sticking point in this House bill. What else is in there?
Jenna, the annual defense bill typically receives bipartisan support. But this time around, all but 4 House Democrats opposed the legislation. At issue, a number of GOP-sponsored amendments regarding abortion, transgender rights, and diversity.
It is woefully irresponsible that extreme MAGA Republicans have hijacked a bipartisan bill that is essential to our national security and taken it over and weaponized it in order to jam their extreme right-wing ideology down the throats of the American people.
Republicans continue to keep our promises. Technically, it's a bipartisan vote, but 4 Democrats vote with us. Are the rest of the Democrats against a pay raise for their veterans? Are they against deterring China for a safe future? Are they against rooting out wasteful spending?
The measure that mainly appears to have eroded the Democrats' support, a reversal of a Pentagon policy providing reimbursement for abortion travel across state lines. It's the same policy Senator Tommy Tuberville has been protesting since February by blocking the confirmation of all senior military officers.
Well, good morning, everybody.
Members of the House Freedom Caucus say they hope their defense bill motivates Senate Republicans to back Tuberville's efforts.
Taxpayer money is provided to the DOD and intended to provide for our national defense and our national security. It is not to promote and support the Biden administration's radical, immoral, pro-abortion agenda.
Meanwhile, National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan says the current House defense bill stands no chance of reaching the president's desk.
What's real is the necessary capabilities, technologies, and fundamental social support for our troops and their families. That's what this all should have been focused on, not these domestic political issues.
The Senate now begins debate on its own defense bill, which cleared the Armed Services Committee with bipartisan support just a few weeks ago. When their final version passes, House and Senate negotiators will work on a compromise bill to send to President Biden. Jenna?
All right, National Security Correspondent Caitlin Burke, thank you very much. And for more on this, let's bring in Lieutenant General Jerry Boykin. He is an Executive Vice President at the Family Research Council. General Boykin, welcome. Great to have you with us this evening. So what do you make of this bill passed by the House?
I'm sorry, would you repeat that?
Your thoughts on this bill passed by the House?
Well, first of all, we really are making up for years of neglect where the military has not been doing what they should be doing, and what they should be doing is preparing for war, getting ready to win the nation's wars. And instead, we've had our military in a classroom doing a lot of training that has everything to do with being woke and nothing to do with preparing for war. And I think that what this does is it starts moving the needle. This is not a perfect NDAA by any means, but it is certainly moving us back to where the military ought to be, starting with a very good pay raise, because of the pay raises in the past few years have certainly not been able to keep up with inflation.
So Democrats say these social issues don't belong in the defense bill. Where do you stand on that, General Boykin? And should a defense bill include more than just defense?
Look, this whole issue that Tommy Tuberville is standing on, for example, is one of those issues that we would call a social issue. But the reality is, as you know, and all of your listeners and watchers know, there's a law that prevents that. And what we want to do is put this in exactly the wrong place, because that does not need to be in the bills that are going to have everything to do with the needs of our military. Now, I think that these social issues are very much part of who we are as a nation. It's not just abortion, but I do think that what we have here is a situation where people, for their own personal agendas and the agendas of their little subgroup within the Senate there, I think that what they need to do is focus on getting our military back on its feet with the right equipment, the right people, the right leadership, and that's very important, particularly with what's coming up now on the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. So I think that these are very important to who we are, and I think that they are exactly what should be in this, as long as we understand that it is about the character and the morale of our military.
You mentioned Senator Tuberville. He's essentially blocked all confirmations for senior military officers over this issue of abortion in the military. Just a few seconds left, but what do you make of his tack there? Do you think it's effective?
Well, it's still ongoing, and they haven't persuaded him to stop yet, and I think that he's a courageous man that is doing something that is very important to America as a nation.
All right, General Jerry Boykin with the Family Research Council, thank you so much for coming on this evening. It's great to have you.
Thank you.
And turning to wild weather affecting millions of Americans, easing rain tonight in the Northeast, where the search continues for two missing children swept away Sunday into flash flooding in Pennsylvania. At least 6 others were killed by high waters over the weekend. Meanwhile, the heat wave is striking the South and West and showing no signs of letting up. Nearly 100 million Americans are under some sort of heat advisory, and forecasters say a cool down is not coming quickly, with the hot weather expected to remain much of the week. And a heat wave in Israel sent Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to the hospital over the weekend. The 73-year-old is now home and recovering. Netanyahu was admitted for dehydration on Saturday after experiencing mild dizziness. In a video, Netanyahu said he spent the day at the Sea of Galilee with no hat and no water. He encouraged all Israelis to spend less time in the sun and to stay hydrated. Meanwhile, here at home, President Biden today invited Netanyahu to the White House. The ask comes as Republican presidential hopefuls are showing their support for Israel. The annual Christians United for Israel Summit is happening just outside the nation's capital, bringing in both lawmakers and Christians who support the Jewish state. GOP candidate and Florida Governor Ron DeSantis spoke today about his commitment to Israel.
Why? Why Israel? Well, it's something that's personal to my wife, Casey, and to me. It comes from our faith in God. It comes from the visits, and I've done a number of visits to Israel over the years, where you can walk with a Bible in your hand, read the Bible, and stand right where people like David and Jesus stood thousands and thousands of years ago. The Bible comes to life when you're in Israel.
Both former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley and former Vice President Mike Pence will speak at CUFI's Night to Honor Israel. Well, from huge hauls to depleting dollars, which 2024 presidential hopefuls are raking in the big bucks, and who's hoping for a miracle to make it through? Next on Faith Nation. Just 6 months away from the first primary votes of the 2024 presidential elections, and campaign fundraising efforts are in full effect. In the Republican field, aside from money raised by PACs and the RNC, only 3 campaigns were able to top the $10 million mark. Former President Donald Trump took in more than $15 million, Ron DeSantis $21 million, and Doug Burgum $11.7 million, though more than $10 million of that is a personal loan from the candidate himself. On the Democratic side, incumbent President Joe Biden's campaign, working with the DNC, has raised $72 million since launching his re-election bid in April, more than any GOP candidate to date. And here now to continue the conversation, Nathan Gonzalez, editor and publisher of Inside Elections and a Faith Nation contributor. Nathan, welcome. So compare President Biden's second quarter re-election fundraising to Trump in 2019 and Obama in 2011. He's actually falling short. Nathan, should Democrats be concerned at this point?
I continue to think that the best thing Biden can do for his reelection efforts is to do a good job. I mean, he's the incumbent president. This election will partially be a referendum on the job that he's doing. So if people feel confident in the direction of the country when we get to a year from now, then his chances go up. And if people don't have confidence in the direction of the country, the economy, our security, then there's really no amount of money that Biden could spend to change people's minds. So money is important in campaigns, but I don't think Biden, and I'll even say I don't think former President Trump will win or lose this race because of money. They're going to have enough money to spend by the time we get to the end.
Yeah. Let's talk about young voters for a minute. If you look at a lot of the data, younger voters do tend to lean left, and it's something many GOP candidates are hoping to change, including Vivek Ramaswamy, who highlighted it in Iowa Leadership Summit. I think we have a soundbite. Let's listen to that and we'll get your reaction.
That it is one nation under God. Yes, it is a nation that is stronger when we ground ourselves in the unit of the family. Then I noticed something happens, especially for younger people across the country, Tucker, is they're more open to that message than they thought, but they need someone to serve it up to them.
Nathan, what do Republicans need to do to win over those younger voters?
Well, I think it's tough because when we're talking about younger voters, we're talking about millions of voters across the political spectrum. I think what they want to try to do is improve and continue to do better with younger voters, depending on what set of data you look at and in what election cycle. Democrats tend to win voters 18 to 29 years old, anywhere from 18 points to 30 points. And there's a lot of different range in there. But what I think we're seeing with the Republican candidates right now, and when they talk about what they're hearing from younger voters, we have to remember they're in a bubble right now. They're in a primary and they're going to different conferences or rallies or meeting with groups. They're meeting with Republicans and meeting with young conservatives and young Republicans who would tend to agree with them or be open to their message. But when we broaden it out to Democratic younger voters who lean Democratic or are more independent, then things get more difficult.
Yeah. So between the Evangelical Family Leadership Summit and the Christians United for Israel Summit that's happening right now outside of Washington, candidates are really trying to use these events, Nathan, to appeal to faith voters. It's a huge constituency. Former President Trump, though, he was a no-show at both. What do you make of that?
Well, there are no accidents in campaigns. There are no accidents in scheduling. So it's no accident that Trump wasn't there. I think white evangelicals still are a majority of them are still firmly in Trump's camp because they're appreciative of what he did as president, or they like his style and his approach. I don't think Trump can take evangelicals for granted, though. I think that as voters listen to some of these other candidates, listen to them talk about how faith is instrumental in their life and in their policies, they could resonate. But Trump, even though Trump isn't going to these rallies, he is doing some other events. I know that he did a screening with The Sound of Freedom, which is a movie that is gaining a lot of traction in white evangelical circles. So Trump, I think Trump has to be careful not to take this lead for granted.
All right, Nathan Gonzalez of Inside Elections, we're out of time this evening, but thank you so much. Great to see you.
Thanks, Jenna. Good to see you.
And still to come, the aftermath of the Nashville school shooting. Survivors share their stories next on Faith Nation. Welcome back. Well, at the heart of gun control measures are the people whose lives have been affected by firearms, like the parents and children in Nashville who faced a shocking shooting firsthand earlier this year when a killer opened fire in a Christian school. 6 people, including 3 children, died. But as Charlene Aaron reports, amid the ongoing grief and devastation, an incredible act of kindness has emerged.
March 27th, a day that forever changed this Nashville community due to the deadly shooting at Covenant Presbyterian School. Residents here, many who are Christians, continue to rely on their faith for comfort and strength, a faith that offers hope and healing as they seek to move forward. From scenes of chaos to ones of calm, life in Nashville appears to be back to normal, although it hasn't been easy.
We heard the sirens going by and knew something was up.
Nathan Parker serves as senior pastor at Woodmont Baptist Church, where parents waited anxiously to see their children that tragic day.
So we went outside and there were already families in our parking lot running towards the door. Within, seconds, there were tons of police on site, and they said, "Where do we put these families, these parents?" And I said, "I think the sanctuary would be a good space."
Space that served as both a physical and spiritual refuge.
I think the prayers of our saints and the prayers of saints around the world who were lifting our church and these families to the Lord during that time provided a supernatural covering of peace, of calm. Families, there were some times of grief and some intense mourning, but for the most part, it was very peaceful and calm.
Aaron and Mary Joyce joined those waiting in the pews, not knowing if their daughter Monroe, a 3rd grader at the school, was safe.
My faith was being challenged, and it was really hard. I mean, it almost felt like you're trapped in a nightmare.
Once reunited, it would be weeks before the 9-year-old would open up about how she hid from the shooter firing at fellow students.
She said, "Mommy, I was really still and really quiet. Everyone else was crying, and I was the only one not crying." And I still don't know how she wasn't seen. She saw the shooter, and she saw the gun sticking through their door, just going off. I still don't know what protected her that day, except for God.
This violence at a Christian school has shattered this community's illusions of safety.
At this point, it can happen anywhere.
While grateful to still hold their daughter, the Joyces say seeing the pain of friends who lost children in the shooting has been unbearable.
I can't imagine not being able to tuck in my child or squeeze my child. I would do anything to give that feeling back to my friends.
It is a pain shared by Anna Caudle. She had been a longtime friend of Catherine Kuntz, the head of Covenant School, one of the 6 killed that day.
And I kept thinking, okay, well, she must be talking to the police at this point, or she must still be in the building, or she must be making sure that the kids are getting on the buses.
Caudle recalls Kuntz as a selfless, devoted educator and a woman grounded in faith.
I've described her as a tree with roots that just reach down so far in her faith, and branches that provide shade and nurture and sustenance for everyone within her reach.
As the investigation continues into why former student Audrey Hale carried out the attack, her parents have turned over her so-called manifesto to the Covenant school families. Despite efforts to make the writings public, Covenant parents are fighting to keep them sealed, out of concern about possible copycat shootings. CBN News asked the Joyces about this push, but they declined to answer, citing legal reasons. Deborah Fisher of Tennessee's Coalition for Open Government says if a judge prevents the release, it would set a bad precedent.
The victims and the school and the church want the court to recognize new law, to create new law in Tennessee that would allow basically a victim's veto over releasing evidence in a crime, or churches or schools or anyone with a property right, their veto. And so we think that that is not the road to go.
In the meantime, many are turning to God for answers.
Church attendance throughout this area was boosted in those weeks after the shooting as people turned to the Lord for help, for not just answers, but for comfort, for encouragement, for healing.
Dr. Stephen Freeman of Grace Baptist Church in nearby Springfield also sees God moving in a special way.
We pray for even the opportunity through something like this tragedy happening, that we can point people to the Lord.
Ministry has been extending to the shooter's family.
One of the things that stunned me to learn was that the Covenant families had pulled together and paid for the funeral of Audrey Hale, the shooter.
A clear example, one of the finest examples of Christian love that I think could ever be expressed.
I mean, it's absolutely necessary. It's the point. She was, not raised completely in that community, but she was a part of it for a minute. And unfortunately, through degrees at a time, got completely lost. And I don't think we allow that to sever her parents' need for love.
A love Parker says can heal the community and overcome any evil.
In this world, we will have tribulation, as Jesus told us, but we can take heart because he has overcome this world. He's overcome all the divisions, all the violence, the injustice, that our hope is in this new heaven, the new earth that he's coming to bring.
Charlene Aaron, CBN News, Nashville, Tennessee.
And still ahead, nearly 9 hours, 28 miles, and tons of money for a good cause. How one teen is making waves. Next on Faith Nation. And finally tonight, a California teen making waves for cancer research, becoming one of the youngest people ever to complete the 28-mile marathon swim. 15-year-old Maya Marriage swam under the 20 bridges surrounding the island of Manhattan on Sunday. And she did it all for a good cause. Maya raised more than $60,000 to fight cancer. And she is not done yet. Next year, she plans to swim the English Channel to continue raising money. And good for her. Job well done. And that's going to do it for Faith Nation tonight. Thank you for joining us. We'll see you tomorrow.